Well, as we have been following all throughout rush hour, the House adjourning for the day after 3 failed speaker votes for Republican leader Kevin McCarthy has not happened in 100 years. McCarthy did need 218 votes. He received 203 in both rounds of voting, and then 202 in the third and final round. So joining us now, Mychael Schnell, House reporter with our partners at The Hill. Mychael, thank you for being with us on this historic day. You know, once in a century occurrence at this point. Is this embarrassing for McCarthy? We know he has dedicated so much of his life to this specific achievement, or is this just par for the course, just what he has to go through?
Listen, Nichole, it's definitely not ideal for Kevin McCarthy, right? He has been saying for weeks that he's remaining in the speaker's fight no matter what. He vowed to go to as many ballots as it'll take, but it's definitely not ideal. But there's one thing for sure, is that he was sort of aware that this is how proceedings would go today. I spoke to him earlier this morning before the House convened and before they started voting for speaker. And I asked him, do you think you'll be elected speaker today? And he said, I think it may take a while. I said, how many days? He said, I just don't know. So that just goes to show that while this was not ideal for McCarthy, the length that this is taking and the struggle that he is having to secure the votes for speaker was not totally unknown. And that's because for weeks we've been seeing a number of Republicans, namely those 5 never Kevins, say that they would not vote for McCarthy under any circumstances. Today, they followed through with that vow.
Well, you know, so we're taking a look at the votes there. You know, 19 Republicans against him in rounds 1, 2, 20 against him in that third round there. How much of this was expected? I mean, McCarthy obviously planned for some opposition, but how much of this was a surprise? I mean, is this how McCarthy saw this Tuesday proceeding?
I don't know if he expected the number to swell to as high as 20. As I mentioned before, there's been those 5 lawmakers who have said they would not support him under any circumstances, though there were a handful of others who were withholding their support, not yet saying whether they would support or oppose him, waiting to announce that what their decision would ultimately be on the floor. I don't know that he expected it to swell that high to 20. One thing that I found to be really interesting in these voter turnouts for who voted for McCarthy and who didn't is that 4 of the lawmakers who did not, so 4 of the Republicans who did not support McCarthy throughout all 3 ballots are new members. They're members-elect. They're not even sworn into the House yet. That's because the first thing that the House has to do in the beginning of a new Congress is elect a speaker. Only after then can members be sworn in. So 4 new faces came to Washington just recently. It's their first time voting in the House. They didn't support McCarthy. That was one detail that I found pretty interesting.
That is really interesting, Mychael. So let's say, if this process just moves forward with one vote after another, ending the same way or ending with more Republicans opting not to vote for McCarthy, is the only realistic option at that point for him to drop out of the race for speaker?
It remains to be seen what could happen. There are a litany of different paths and different ways that this could play out. McCarthy could end up striking a deal behind the scenes with his detractors, bringing them on board, securing the gavel, or that number of GOP opposers could increase, as we saw from the second ballot to the third ballot. McCarthy has said, he told reporters just earlier today before the third ballot, that he's going to remain in this fight for as long as it takes, though, we'll see as the ballots continue, and if that block of GOP opposition does not move, he may have to make a decision of whether or not he would step out of the race. That then opens up a whole nother question, is who would fill that void? There are a number of names that are being floated, but no one has fully come forward as what they're calling a consensus candidate who could garner enough support to actually wield the gavel in this session.
So we will all be watching, glued to Washington. All right, Mychael, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.